Something unusual has been happening inside Windows Defender. Researchers have been flagging it for years. Microsoft has acknowledged it, documented it, even written about it in its own technical papers. And still, it has not been fixed. Not last year. Not this year. And based on everything Microsoft has publicly said, not next year either. If you rely on Windows Defender as your primary antivirus, which is the default for nearly every Windows 11 installation on Earth, you need to understand what this means. Because the problem is not a 0 day that just got discovered. The problem is a design decision. And it is sitting on your computer right now. Let me explain exactly what is going on, because this one genuinely matters. The issue centers on how Windows Defender handles exclusions. Exclusions are the list of files, folders, and processes that Defender is told to ignore. On paper, exclusions are a legitimate feature. System administrators use them so that large database files or backup tools do not constantly trigger scans. Developers use them so that compilers and build tools run at full speed. The feature itself is not the problem. The problem is that for years, these exclusion lists have been readable by ordinary users on the same machine, including users with no administrator privileges at all. Security researchers at firms like Bleeping Computer and Tenable have demonstrated this repeatedly. You open a command prompt, you run a specific reg query, and you get the full list of what Windows Defender is not looking at. No prompt, no warning, no admin rights needed. For a normal user, that sounds boring. For an attacker, it is a treasure map. Because the first thing a piece of malware wants to know, once it lands on a machine, is where it can hide. And Windows, through Windows Defender, will happily tell it. Microsoft has known about this for years. Independent researchers have raised the issue on security mailing lists going back to 2021. Microsoft's public response has essentially been that exclusions are configuration data, not secrets, and that querying them is by design. In other words, the company classifies this as a feature, not a vulnerability, which is a very specific kind of answer. It means there will not be a patch. There will not be a security update. The behavior you see today is the behavior Microsoft intends you to have. Now, here's where this gets more serious, because Defender is no longer just one option among many. In Windows 11, Defender is the default. It runs out of the box. It is deeply integrated with the operating system. Most home users never install a third-party antivirus because they are told, correctly in many ways, that Defender is good enough. Microsoft's own marketing materials lean on this, and for everyday malware, Defender is genuinely capable. It catches common threats. It updates definitions constantly. It has clawed its way from being a joke 15 years ago to a respected product today. But respected is not the same as airtight. And when you layer a known design weakness on top of a product that hundreds of millions of people rely on as their only line of defense, the math starts to look uncomfortable. There is more to the picture. Security researchers have also documented how Defender's attack surface reduction rules, often called ASR, can be bypassed using techniques Microsoft has publicly described in its own security documentation. ASR is supposed to be the shield that stops ransomware from encrypting your files. It works by blocking certain behaviors, like Office programs spawning executables. Researchers have shown that creative process chains, signed binary abuse, and a handful of living off the land techniques can often slip past ASR without triggering alerts. Microsoft's position here is more nuanced. The company has patched specific bypasses when they have been responsibly disclosed, but the underlying philosophy, which is rule-based rather than behavior-based, has not changed, which means researchers keep finding new bypasses. Here is the frustrating part. Microsoft has a more aggressive version of Defender available. It is called Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, sometimes branded as Defender XDR. It includes behavioral analytics, cloud-delivered telemetry, and far more aggressive detection logic. It is excellent. It is also expensive, and it is sold almost exclusively to enterprises. Home users and small businesses do not get it. They get the basic Defender, the one with the readable exclusion lists, the one with the ASR bypasses, the one Microsoft classifies as configuration by design. You might be thinking, this is one antivirus product among many. Why does it matter if it has blind spots? The answer is that Defender's market share, when measured, as the default on fresh Windows installations, is overwhelming. According to AV test data published throughout 2024 and into 2025, Microsoft Defender is used as the primary or only endpoint protection on roughly half of all Windows machines globally. On home devices, that percentage climbs even higher, when the default product for half of an operating system's user base has a documented, unpatched design weakness. That is not a niche problem. That is a statistical certainty that some number of users will be compromised because of it. Now, let's talk about what you can actually do, because I'm not here to scare you without giving you something practical to walk away with. The first thing to understand is that Defender is not bad. I want to be clear about that. It is a capable product. And for the average user, it prevents a lot of harm. Removing it entirely is almost never the right move, because leaving a machine with no real-time protection is far worse than any exclusion list issue. What you want instead is to harden Defender and, in some cases, layer something on top of it. Start with your own exclusion list. Open Windows Security, go to Virus and Threat Protection, click Manage Settings, scroll to Exclusions, and look at what is there. If you did not add it yourself, and if it is not something a trusted installer added on your behalf, remove it. You would be surprised how often legitimate-looking entries turn out to be left over from old installers, old games, or old utilities that were uninstalled years ago. Each one of those is a spot where malware can safely live. Next, enable cloud-delivered protection and automatic sample submission if they are not already on. These are the features that let Defender compare suspicious files against Microsoft's live threat intelligence, which updates far faster than local definitions. Some privacy-conscious users disable these, and that is a legitimate choice, but it is a trade. Less telemetry means slower detection of new threats. There is no free lunch here. Third, turn on controlled folder access. This is the anti-ransomware feature built into Defender that restricts which applications can write to sensitive folders like documents, pictures, and desktop. It is off by default because it can interrupt legitimate software. But on a home machine where you know what you are running, turning it on is one of the most impactful changes you can make. Walk through the allow list exercise once, add your trusted apps, and move on. Fourth, if you want a belt and suspenders approach, consider layering a second on-demand scanner. Malwarebytes, free or ESET. Online scanner are two that do not conflict with Defender because they only run when you tell them to. You keep Defender as your real-time shield, and once a week, you run a secondary sweep. This kind of layered approach is what security professionals have been doing for 2 decades, and it remains effective. And this is where the Linux conversation inevitably enters the room, because if you are reading about a design limitation in Microsoft's default security product, and you find yourself thinking, why do I have to jump through hoops just to be reasonably safe on the operating system I paid for? You are not alone. A growing number of users are asking that question. Linux is not immune to malware, despite what some enthusiasts will tell you. There are Linux rootkits, Linux botnets, and targeted attacks on Linux servers every day. But the threat model for a Linux desktop user, running from official repositories, with CLinux or Apermore enabled, is meaningfully smaller than for a Windows 11 home user relying solely on Defender. Not because Linux is magic, because the architectural assumptions are different, and because the targeted user base is smaller. I am not going to tell you to switch operating systems because of one exclusion list issue. That would be dishonest. Most of the people listening to this have real reasons to be on Windows. Adobe, specific games, work software, a camera or scanner that only has Windows drivers. I get that. What I will say is that it is worth understanding what you're getting and what you're not getting with the default security posture Microsoft hands you. Here is the thing that bothers me most about this whole situation. Not the technical detail, not even the unpatched design decision itself. What bothers me is the silence around it. If you search for basic articles about Windows Defender on the mainstream tech press, you will find endless praise, endless comparisons against third-party products, where Defender comes out near the top, and very little discussion of the architectural quirks that researchers have been pointing at for years. The conversation is weirdly sanitized, and I suspect that is because Defender has become a story Microsoft wants told in one particular way, as a redemption arc from bad product to industry standard shield. That story is mostly true, but mostly true is not the same as complete. Complete means acknowledging that the product ships with visible exclusion lists. Complete means acknowledging that ASR is rule-based and that rule-based systems will always have workarounds. Complete means acknowledging that the most capable version of Defender is locked behind enterprise licensing. These are not scandals, they are design choices, but they are design choices users should be aware of, because security decisions should be made with eyes open. And we are only at the beginning of this conversation, because Windows 12, expected in the next 18 months based on Microsoft's own public roadmap, is being built around an even tighter integration between Defender and the operating system's artificial intelligence layer. That means more telemetry, more behavioral analysis, and more reliance on cloud judgment calls. It will also mean new blind spots, new design compromises, and new decisions to classify certain problems as features rather than bugs. We will be talking about all of them as they emerge. If any of this has made you rethink the defaults on your own machine, good. That is the whole point. Security is not a product you buy once. It is a posture you maintain. Take 10 minutes this week to walk through your Defender settings, clean out your exclusion list, turn on controlled folder access, run a secondary scan with a trusted on-demand tool. Then go back to living your life, because the goal is not paranoia. The goal is awareness. If you found this useful, and if you want the follow-up where We walk through Defender's more aggressive hardening options step by step. Make sure you are subscribed because that video is coming next. And let me know in the comments, did you find any exclusions on your machine that you did not put there? I read those. I genuinely want to know how widespread this is, because if there is one thing the last decade of cybersecurity has taught us, it is that the problems nobody is talking about are almost always the ones that matter most.